Hello and welcome to the channel Gone with Gandalf, where I discuss Middle-earth and beyond. Today I'm trying a slightly different video topic, and I'm doing a character profile on a fellow from the Silmarillion who has more names than I have video uploads on this channel, and that is Túrin, son of Húrin, and he is chiefly from the region of Dor Lormin, which is one of the lands that was sunk beneath the waves in the First Age. So here is a map of Beleriand, and I will be zooming in, zooming out, zooming around here to show the paths of our character. But before we get on to him, I'll very briefly go over the story of his father Húrin, who, basically it doesn't quite make sense if I don't. So, in the beginning, he and his brother were being fostered in the forest of Brethil by their uncle. And when they were about 17, these lads went on a war party to go hunt some orcs, and they got separated around the river Sirion, and it didn't look too good for them. But then Ulmo, the Valor of the waters, he sends up some mist that fogs the area a bit so they can get away, but they didn't go in the right direction. They went to Dimbar, which is here, and here they pick up an Uber sent via the Great Eagles, and the Great Eagles pick them up and take them to the hidden Noldorin city of Gondolin. And while they're in Gondolin for a few years actually, and they have the favour of the king there called Turgon. And one of the laws of Gondolin is that you're not allowed to leave because you give away the secret of where it is. However, as they're men, they're going to die eventually, so they promise to the king they won't tell anyone about it. And he says, okay, go on then. And they get back up on the eagles and fly them back to whence they came. Well, coming back, everyone knew that they had been somewhere, because they didn't look like they've just been out in the wild. No, they've got these nice garms, and they look well fed and whatnot. However, his father, Húrin's father, gets killed because he's not wearing a helmet, the silly man, and therefore Húrin became the lord of Dor Lormin, and he goes back to Dor Lormin, and a few years later he gets called to battle, and this battle is called the Nirnaeth Noediad. And this is translated as the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. It does not go well, and during this battle, eventually Húrin gets captured by the forces of Morgoth around the Fen of Serek. His brother, by the way, Huor, he didn't fare so well. He took an arrow to the face and died. So he gets captured. Morgoth knows that he's been taken, or he had been to Gondolin, and he asks him, where is it, mate? And he's like, nah, I'm not telling you. So he gets put upon the slopes of Thangorodrim on a little stone chair, and he has to sit there and watch the world burn, essentially. That is his punishment, and his family are cursed by Morgoth, and this is then unfurled in the lives of his children. Now, Túrin was about 7 or 8 during the time of this great defeat, and Morgoth sent in Easterlings that had betrayed the forces of good in the battle to preside over the land of Dor Lormin in his name. Now, Túrin's mother, Morven, she was obviously quite worried about this, fearing for his safety, so she sends him on his way to the Sindar kingdom of Doriath, and hoping that they would take care of him, basically. Previously in the Tales of Silmarillion. Sorry. Before, Elithingol would have said, no men are coming into my kingdom, as he did for hundreds of years. However, recently his son-in-law was actually a man, and he'd seen what they could do, so he's like, yeah, okay, come on in. You're cool because you're of the same kin. And so Túrin is allowed to go in there, and he's taken as a foster son to the king. So he's in a high and good position. He's nice and secure there. Many messages were sent between Túrin and his mother and his baby sister, who had just been born as he was leaving in Dor Lormin. Now, once he was about 17 or 18, he received the greatest heirloom of his house from his mother, which was the dragon helm of Dor Lormin, which, by the way, his grandfather, had he been wearing that, he would have survived probably the arrow to the face. With this, then, he went to the northern marches of Doriath alongside Beleg Strongbow, and the two became a powerful duo. And this helm that he wore was very, very famous. It was well known. It has a great story. The elves know it, men know it, and also the orcs know it. And they began to fear it, and word of this actually came back to Morgoth. He now knew where Túrin was. However, he did very well there, and over the course of 3 years, he did well. And he came back to the halls of Menegroth looking rather shaggy in appearance, and one of the elves of the court, he was a Nandarin elf from the east, and he basically badmouthed Túrin, and later on he tried to ambush him, not to kill him, but just to play a trick upon him. And Túrin caught him in the act and told him to run naked through the forest for his enjoyment and as a punishment. However, this didn't go too well because the elf called Cyros, he actually ran off a cliff and died. Túrin didn't really want to hang about for judgment, so he just went. He just left. So he fled west, and he happened upon a group of outlaws, and he swiftly became the leader of these outlaws by killing the former leader of the outlaws. He gave himself a new name, though, of Nathan the Wronged. Beleg, his friend from the northern marches, eventually gets leave of the king to go and find Túrin and perhaps bring him back, as he was found not guilty of any crime. So Beleg goes and finds the outlaws. The outlaws tie him up and threaten to kill him until Túrin comes and sees who it is, and he's like, "Stop doing that, that's my friend." Beleg then tries to get Túrin to come back, and Túrin is too prideful, and he's like, "No, there's no way, I'm staying out here, I'm doing my own thing now." And Beleg goes back to the halls of Menegroth, tells the king what had happened, and says, like, "Can I go back and at least fight with him?" And the king says, "Yes, like, of course you can, look after my foster son." So Beleg picks a special sword called Anglakel, which is a black sword, and he gets that as a gift from the king. And he also takes the dragon helm of Dor Lormin with him to give to his friend. Whilst Beleg was gone, though, Túrin and his band of brothers accidentally killed a pygmy dwarf, and then discovered he had some nice halls upon the hill of Amon Rud, and they went there and they set up shop there, which was nice. It had a nice bit of a vantage point across the plains there. Now, when Beleg came back, this land then became free of tyranny for a short while, as the outlaws started only killing orcs rather than terrorizing men and elves as well. So this became known as Dor Cuathol, which is just the land of helm and bow, as Beleg is Beleg Strongbow. He's known for his bowman skills. And Túrin gets another name, and that is Gorthol, the Dread Helm. Now, as I said, this helm is incredibly recognisable, and Morgoth soon heard exactly what was going on in Dor Cuathol. So he sent some orcs down there, and they capture the petty dwarf Mim, who also lives upon Amon Rud. and he tells them exactly where to go. So the orcs, they go in there at night and they kill all the outlaws and take Túrin as their prisoner. Beleg, though, with his elven endurance, he had survived, and finally coming to his senses, he goes after the orcs who had captured his best buddy, and he ends up in Taur Nufuin, and there he also finds an escaped prisoner from Angband called Gwyndor, and together they then strive to free Túrin. The pair waited for the cover of darkness, and then at that point they would go in and save him. Alas though, for it was too nice and dark. For when Beleg went to go and take the shackles off his best friend, Túrin thought it was another orc to come and terrorise him, so he took up Anglachel and he killed his friend in the dark. And he was very depressed by this. It was very sad. So he didn't really know what to do. And who knows what would have happened to him had it not been for Gwyndor, the elf who actually was from Nargothrond. And he was like, well, I'm going to go home. Do you want to come with? And on the way, they stopped by the pools of Ivrin, where there was some very cold water. And he washed his face there, and suddenly he felt okay. It was like a very bad hangover or something. And they carried on their way. Finally making it then to Nargothrond, Túrin picks up a new name of Agarven, son of Umarth, or Bloodstained, son of Ill Fate, because he doesn't really want to give his real name out for fear of what could happen, and for he knows of the curse of Morgoth. Now, he also is given the name by the elves of Adanathel, or man-elf, because he looks quite similar to the Noldorin elves, being tall, he's got dark hair, and he's got grey or blue eyes, we don't really know. The king of this realm at this time was Orodreth, and his daughter was called Finduilas, and she took an instant liking to our man, and she gave him the name of Thorin, which means the secret. And when you think about it, it's actually quite close to his real name, but he didn't really bother. Túrin's friend Gwyndor, though, he used to be in great favour with Finduilas, and he obviously used to fancy her. And because of this, Túrin was like, okay, yeah, I won't go near her. And however, with the rising favour of Túrin in the eyes of the king, this troubled Gwyndor, and then he told Finduilas exactly who he was. And this was very interesting to the king, and this actually, well, it didn't work quite as well as Gwyndor had hoped, because this then increased the favour that Túrin received, because they knew of his heritage and actually who he was. Now, Algai, he was consumed by vengeance against Morgoth, and he wanted to use his favour to then prepare Nargothrond for war and to go all out, because he wasn't a fan of just hiding in bushes shooting arrows or whatever. So he wanted to get an army to go out there and kill orcs. Now, here we have, as you can see, this is Nargothrond. Can't be anything else. It's an amazing depiction. Now, up until this time, there was a river that went out in front of the gate, so you couldn't get straight across. You had to go miles out your way further upriver to be able to cross it. Now, this was not to Túrin's liking, because he wanted a bridge. He wanted to get troops over the river quickly and get them back in, and so you could get an army over this, so it was nice and strong. Here is actually one of my favourite depictions of Túrin, and here we see the dragon helm of Dorlomin on his head, and the former sword of Beleg Strongbow. It used to be called Anglachel, but he had it reforged by the smiths in Nargothrond, and it was renamed by him as Gorthang. And He won great renown with all these battles out in the field again, and however, Morgoth once again got wind of the dragon helm of Dor-lómin out and about, so it wasn't to last. But he did get another name, and that was Mormegil, which meant the Black Sword. Morgoth, again in his infinite wisdom, sends out orcs, but not just orcs. This time he's not hanging about. He also sends the father of dragons, Glaurung, along with them to face these elves out in the open field. And Túrin and the elves go and face them, and at this point here on the map you can see Thumhalad. It's an absolute slaughter, and Glaurung, he breathes fire, and the elves just get burned by it, apart from Túrin, because he's got this amazing dragon helm that was actually made by the dwarves. So he can bear it okay, but he gets away. The king dies, basically everyone else dies. He makes it back to Nargothrond to try and save the people. But with his intervention, he has doomed a realm, as the bridge was way too well built and they could not dismantle it in time before the orcs poured in. And he goes in while they're already looting the halls, and he gets caught also, by the way. Glaurung is already there, and he's there in the entrance, and he traps Túrin with his glare, which is some kind of magic, and he has to just stand there while all these captives are taken by the orcs, including Finduilas, the daughter of the king. Glaurung at this point gives him a lie, saying that his mother and his sister are being tormented in Dor-lómin, and he should go and save them. So Túrin has a choice. Does he go and save his family, or does he go after Finduilas? Now, he doesn't really care, well, he cares a little about Finduilas, but he cares a lot more about his family. So he decides to go after them first. And so he goes to Dor-lómin. So here he is, in his old house. He asks a woman that also is one of his people that lived there, who's just now married to the leader of the Easterlings that preside over the land. And he asks them, where are they? And she says they've gone to Doriath, and he's angry at this. So he kills her husband and kills a lot of other people as well. And because of this, the remnant of his people in Dor-lómin get even greater persecuted. So he's just, anywhere he goes, it's just it's to the ruin of his own kind. So now he then goes, he's failed that one mission, and he's gone after the other. So he goes after Finduilas, but too late once again, because the orcs, as they were going past the forest of Brethil, some of the woodsmen had come out to try and save the prisoners, kill the orcs, and they'd immediately killed all their prisoners, and Finduilas was found to get up against a tree with a spear in her. So that went really well. So then he actually fainted, and he was taken in by the foresters in Brethil. And this is, of course, even though they don't know it yet, this is the worst thing they could have done, because anywhere he goes, ruin will follow, and it will, spoiler alert. However, while he's here, he comes up with another name, and that is Turambar, which means Master of Doom. He believes that now, after all the bad that has happened to him, it couldn't possibly get any worse. So he believes that the curse that was placed upon him by Morgoth has actually now finally finished. Around this time, then, his sister and mother, who had been in Doriath, they heard of the fall of Nargothrond, and they went to go and see if he was about. And, the dragon Glaurung came out of Nargothrond, realised who his sister was. By the way, her name is Nienor. And Nienor fell under the spell of Glaurung, and he erased her memory. So she couldn't remember a thing. And then she just went a bit crazy and ran north, and it just so happened she ended up in Brethil. Now, this is obviously where her brother Túrin was, but the two had never actually met, so they knew of each other. They didn't know what one another would have looked like, even if she had her memory. And after a time, eventually they end up getting married. Isn't that just great? Bit of incest, a bit of Game of Thrones. But it was not to last, because once again he goes out and fights, gets his sword, gets his helm, and Glaurung the dragon knows exactly who he is and where he is. So he's like, I'm going to go burn that forest. And seeing this, because it's a long plain, so they see the dragon coming, and Túrin, he gets a couple of companions, like, let's go kill this dragon, okay? And one of them then, soon after, is like, actually, no, I can't. And they carry on, the two of them, Túrin and his friend, and they're in this ravine at the crossings of Teiglin, and they're climbing up this ravine, and as Glaurung is going over them, a rock falls and hits his friend on the head. I think his name is Hunthor. He's irrelevant. But Túrin then, he stabs with his sword and kills the dragon, but some of the blood goes on his hand, so again he faints. This was a mortal blow to the dragon. Now, Nienor, the sister wife, or just the wife at this point, of Túrin, comes up and sees her husband slumped over, thinks he's dead. Now, Glaurung tells her that she is actually the brother of Túrin, and he gives her her memory back, and with that, the dragon dies. But then she's like, oh my god, this is awful. And seeing that her brother / husband is already dead, she's like, well, I'm gonna take myself out. And she jumps off the ravine, or into the ravine, off the cliff, and dies. Now, after this, Túrin comes back around and he's like, oh, like, where's my wife? And one of the foresters, his name is Brandir the Lame, he always had a soft spot for Nienor, and there was some great jealousy there towards Túrin as well. He tells Túrin and of what had happened, and then with that, Túrin claims that cannot be true and kills Brandir. And then after that, then some of the foresters come. No, actually, yeah, that did happen. Yeah, she jumped off into the ravine, and he's like, oh no. So he runs off then, and he talks to his blade. Gortang says, will you take my life after killing my best friend and this man Brandir in cold blood as well? So the blade says, yes, I will. And he puts the blade hilt down and falls upon it and dies. So he killed his best friend in Beleg. He caused the ruin of Nargothrond, greater persecution of his people in Dor-lómin, killed a lot of people in Brethil, indirectly burned a lot of the forest, also those outlaws, killed some dwarves as well. There's a lot of bad things he's done, and this is due to the curse of Morgoth. And so ended the tale of Túrin Turambar. Although there are a lot of repercussions that happened due to this. Upon his death, they made a mound for him, and upon his mound they put a gravestone that says Túrin Turambar Dagnir Glaurunga, which just meant Túrin killed Glaurung. Nice one. And they also put Nienor Niniel upon this, even though she jumped off the cliff. They're going to put her on the gravestone. His sister wife. And actually later on, upon this gravestone, is the final meeting of their parents. Morwen comes up and she dies on the mound, but Húrin is let out of Angband after the death of his children, and they meet one last time upon the mound. But I won't get into that because this will just go on and on for so long. Now, it's quite interesting to point out though that the mound on which they were buried never got sunk beneath the wave that the rest of Beleriand was. It became an island. It was called Dol Morwen, which roughly translates as Morwen's Isle. And yeah, so if you wanted to, you could have sailed there in the second and third ages if you wanted to, but probably wouldn't have. There's no reason to. Anyway, this is probably where I'm going to have to leave it. This has gone on for... this is much longer than any video that I intended to make. But nevertheless, I hope that it's been interesting and somewhat entertaining, and now you have more knowledge about it than you did previously. And maybe I'll pick some smaller subject for my next video. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. This has been Gone with Gandalf. Good day.